amazing event. I have to ask that each of you please excuse me because John Carlos had a family emergency at the last minute. So he won't be exactly on this one, but he will be on the one with Jackie Joyner Kersey and Gwen Torrance in 2 weeks. So Ralph Boston graciously at the last minute said that he would come on not next 2 weeks, but this week. And Ralph Boston, for those of you that may not be familiar with the history of Ralph Boston, he was in the 60, 64, and 68 Olympics. And he broke Jesse Owens' records in the long jump, but he was part of that historic atmosphere that was at the 68 Olympics. So you'll still get a gist of that. But I want to start, as the two men will say, ladies first, with, I call her Mother Dezi, but Dr. Woods Jones, Mother Dezi, is just a phenomenal woman. If you want to talk about history before we get to John Smith, and also John Smith is on here. I like John Smith because he was one of the first students into the UCLA of athletes that came, Black athletes that came into UCLA. He was also on the 72 Olympic Games, but he also from South Central. Am I correct, John?
Yeah.
South Central in LA, and he was a high schooler during the time of all the rioting in Watts, etc. So he's part of that whole generation that went through that whole civil rights movement. Also, John, a little known fact, has done acting among other things, but mostly what I'm excited about John is that he's actually been at every Olympiad since 1988 because he coaches Olympians. So he's gone from an Olympic athlete to a coach of Olympic athletes. So let's start with Mother Dezi. Mother Dezi, would you mind unmuting? So Mother Dezi, when the Black Panther, Mother Dezi is from Oakland, California. She was there as the Black Panthers were organizing and creating their movement. As a college student, she participated in SNCC, which is the student leadership protest down, and actually went down south into the heart of it from Oakland and marched and participated in those whole protests. And you had the Dr. King, Mother Dezi, of the movement, and then you had the Black Panthers who you knew personally. And somewhere in the midst of all of this, with the Malcolm X's, etc., a group of educated women, professional Black women, decided that there needed to be a seat at the political table. And because at the time, Blacks didn't have the funding to actually have a political voice, you guys decided y'all were going to be the force behind it. Y'all put y'all's expertise behind it, your money behind it, your voices behind it, your energy behind it. And as a result, you guys were the first to get Black officials elected, which led to Kamala Harris, our new vice president, out of that whole organization. But I asked Mother Dezi, did she know Shirley Chisholm? She sent me a picture with her and Shirley Chisholm. So Mother Dezi, going from Shirley Chisholm to now seeing the first Black female president and the first female vice president, tell us what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. And what a blessing and a pleasure it is to be on. I'm always excited when I get a chance to talk to young leaders, civil rights leaders, seasoned leaders, those of you that continue to be in the struggle. And of course, I have to thank my lovely and my goddaughter, who I am so proud of. She's such a phenomenal and compassionate person, as you all, I'm sure, know. That's dedicated to making sure that we continue to see change taking place in our country and our society, and certainly motivating and being an inspiration. So my dear daughter, Beverly, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on. Now, I'm also the the daughter of a preacher and the granddaughter of preacher folks. So I know you want me to stay to a short timeline. So you wave your hand when I get past my 10 or 15 minutes, because sometimes the time gets away from me. But I'm just so delighted to be on here, and certainly with John Smith and now Ralph Boston, who of course we know these powerful names in our history, and of course John Carlos, who I've had the opportunity to meet years ago, and probably because I'm 79 years old. For you young people now, don't say, "Oh, don't fall out. You're gonna get there one day if God blesses you to live that long." But I'm so glad that I was asked to share a little bit about our history, about BWAPA, which we effectively call our women's organization, and the civil rights movement. So when Bev asked me to give just a little backdrop of what the civil rights movement was like then and now, it's just my pleasure to do that. I grew up as an activist. I don't remember when I wasn't an activist. My parents were very involved in their own way in the struggle and the fight for justice. My father was very involved in the NAACP at the local and state level. My mother was involved in the National Women's Organization, and they were of course involved in their churches. But one thing that they taught their children is that you can't complain about the problems. And of course, we had problems then, as we do now, with the system of justice in this country. But they said, don't just complain about it, be willing to do something about it. So at a very young age, as Beth said, I was actually right out of high school and college. I was always involved in the movement, as we called it then. And much of you all, I call it Black Lives Matter now. It was so much the same, so many similarities. And I was very involved in a group initially from the Bay Area called BCPC, the Black Conference Planning Committee. And that group of activists and talented Don Wardens, and later Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, there were just Stokely Carmichael. There were just so many wonderful leaders that said we had to make a change. And so we actually organized in the Bay Area the first all Black conference in the nation. Often people think that happened in Ohio, but it actually happened in Oakland, California, San Francisco to be exact. And then we went to Los Angeles and had it, and then it went national. But our commitment was so strong as young warriors at that time to say, we have to stand up with our voices. And then later, as Bev said, I made the decision to go to Atlanta, Georgia, to the national headquarters of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, where again, names that I'm sure you all know, the Julian Bonds, again, Kwame Toure's, formerly Stokely Carmichael, the Rap Browns, the Willie Ricks, and actually John Lewis was the chair of SNCC when I first joined. And we went back to I left the Bay Area because I wanted to be involved in the depths of this movement. And so I had the pleasure of just working with some phenomenal individuals.
Andy, please be quiet.
Committed to change in the structure, the social justice, injustice of this country. So that was my beginnings in this movement. I worked there for years, and of course, eventually coming back to the Bay Area. And so I want to now move very quickly, because I don't have a lot of time, into what Bev called how we formed the organization that we effectively still call BWOPA, BWOPA, Black Women Organized for Political Action. It's the oldest such group in California. We predated now the National Organization of Women. We came way before the National Women Organized in terms of what we considered at that time the white women's movement, the feminist movement. BWOPA was there. And so people are standing on our shoulders because we had the courage to take a stand. BWOPA was started by 13 African-American women, strong, powerful women from the Bay Area, educators, financial consultants, attorneys, community activists, organizers. But our sense was that we did not have a voice at the table. that people were making decisions about our lives. And in some cases, even our brothers who we dearly love. And by the way, we're inclusive of our brothers in the movement. And we affectionately call them main horses. So any of y'all out there that want to become a main horse, just let me know. But at that time, that was the slogan. The main horse was like, I guess some of you young people call now, my boo or my whatever. But these were the men that stood with us. But Black women organized for political action decided that unapologetically, we were not at the tables of leadership. We were not at the tables where people were making decisions at the local level, at the national level, at the state level. Now I hear all the time, people say, oh, Black women are now the backbone of the Democratic Party. They're the backbone of politics. Well, let me tell you, we've been the backbone forever. That's nothing new. We've been there forever. So over 50 plus years, I have struggled and worked in the vineyards with some other very powerful women who have said that we're going to make a change and we're going to make sure that we educate and we make sure we inspire and encourage women to be at the table. Now, we recognize that everybody does not want to be an elected official, but there are boards and commissions, there are places in corporate America where our voices are not heard. And it was our determination to say, we're going to be at those tables. And as again, you mentioned Shirley Chisholm, who I have had the pleasure over the years before she passed away to sit down and counsel with the struck, used to say, if there's no room at the table, don't wait for them to give you a seat, you bring a folding chair. And that's what BWOPA started doing. We didn't wait to be invited to have a table. We started knocking down the doors. We started talking about shattering glass ceilings. And yet, after all the work that we did, and we've had many successes, and I'm going to get to the latest one, which we're proud of, but we've had many, many successes. But yet, African-American women, and please know this, young folks, please know this, African-American women have been the largest voters in this country on a percentage basis as anybody else in this nation. And forever, for long, we have always been there. And yet we are the least represented. So when I look now, even though I'm so proud of our lifetime member, BWOPA's lifetime member, our new Vice President, Kamala Harris, I mean, give her a round. It's like she shattered the ceiling. We're so glad that she's there. But you know what happened? We can't stop there, because when Kamala got moved up and elected to the vice presidency, guess what? That left a void in the United States Senate. We don't have one African-American woman in the United States Senate. That's appalling. We should all be annoyed because major decisions are being made, policy decisions. Look what's going on there now. And, and then we got people that are talking about not booting this man out of office that screwed up and filled this country with hate and racism and sexism and all of that for years. And we need a voice there. We've only had 2 African-American women to ever serve in the United States, the history of the United States Senate. Only 2. The other was Sister Carolyn Braun from Illinois. And when she left, then of course Kamala was eventually elected. But now that she's been elevated, we didn't have a replacement. So we have been having a national movement with fill that seat. I'm working with women leaders across the state, women leaders across this nation to say, we've got to make sure that that stops. It's not acceptable for people to give us applause. I don't care whether it's the president of the United States, and I'm just glad we got Biden in there now rather than who we had. I never called his name, number 45. But not only do we need to make sure that we hold them accountable. So when our governor here had the opportunity to appoint someone, we wanted him to appoint a Black woman to fulfill Kamala's seat. Well, he chose not to do that. Now I know Gavin Newsom. I know him well, and he's come to us for our support. But I'm annoyed with him right now, because even though it's not his sole responsibility to make sure we have representation, he could have filled that seat with Barbara Lee or Karen Bass or some other very dynamic Black woman. But he chose to fill it with a Hispanic. Now, I'm not mad at our Latino brothers and sisters. They're doing what they need to do. But the bottom line, it was a political decision. So I don't want to linger on that. What I'm trying to say to you is, even though we have making progress on one level, there's still so much more we have to do. And when people are making decisions, because if you think it doesn't impact you, young woman, I'm looking at sister, what is that, Wantana Barnett or Julie Rosso. I'm just the names and like Kimberly Morgan. Everything you live and breathe is in some way political. Let me tell you that, because people making decisions about your health care, but making decisions about poverty, homelessness, making decisions about our children and our education. Someone's at the table making those decisions. And if we are not at the table helping to make those decisions, then what we really are is we are being void. We're missing in action. Someone is making decisions for us. And I, at my age, I'm not going to stop. I insist on staying until the Lord takes me home to keep fighting injustices everywhere. So that's just kind of a brief summary. I hope I didn't go too long, Beverly.
No, it was
stick around
perfect.
as long as I can. But let me just encourage you. I applaud you all for the work that you all do. I applaud your inspiration and your courage to continue to move forward. But I want to inspire you, and especially some of our young sisters, look at places where you can serve. And if you want some additional training, if you want some consultation, we have mayors and congresswomen and supervisors on our or in our organization who are willing to mentor and to talk. We have a mentoring program. We have the DWJ Fellowship, which we encourage. And again, it's not always about running for an elective office, but it's about being present at the table. And remember, if there's no, they tell you there's no room at the table, there's no chairs there, then you kick that door down and bring your own chair. So thank you so much. And I'll stick around as long as I can and be available if there's any questions. Love you all. Love you, Bev.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Boston, you have been at the 1960, 64, and 68 Olympics. And you've been blessed enough to still be here and will witness the 2021 Olympics coming up. As you look back on those Olympiads with the nation in the state that it was during 60, 64, and 68, how was it as an athlete walking into those arenas, knowing that your dream was on the line, you were representing a country that didn't always represent you well? What was it like for you? And then the other question is, how did you feel about breaking Jesse Owens' record? You have to, you got it unmuted. Ralph, you have to unmute. Hey, Ralph. Yeah, there you go. You got it? So Ralph, what was it like in 60, 64, and 68? Can you hear me?
Doesn't look like he can hear you, Beverly.
I don't think he can hear me. So John, I'm gonna switch to you. John, you were in high school doing all the riots.
Yeah.
You were also at the 72 Olympics, and you were also one of the first sets of athletes to come into UCLA. And you were coming out of South Central. What was it like going through all of that? Because you just witnessed what happened in 68.
Yeah.
And now you're an Olympian in 72, and you come out of the riots of the late 60s.
Well, you know, being in South Central, you know, my name, John Smith, I had to carry my license with me. I was like, I didn't leave home without it. My father was he's in World War II. So he gave me some decorum on how to act when you're out there as a Black man dealing with the police. So he made sure that we had a certain profile. Your hair was cut. Yeah, you were yes sir, no sir, because he said at the end of the day you have to survive in order to be effective.
Mm.
That's
You
powerful right there.
you and I remember Ralph told me at one point. He said you can be too Black and miss the point. So if you don't survive, then your whole journey was futile. And coming out of I went to Drew Junior High School, and at that point we were right down the street from Reese. Reese was a reform school where all the gangsters and stuff came out of juvie, and they went there. And we didn't have a fence around our junior high school, so they could walk through and basically attack us. And knowing me, you weren't going to attack me because I'm gonna hit first. So eventually, they put a fence around, and I realized that the kind of war zone that I was in, not only with the police, but with the gang territory. And I had a father that said, you're not part of no gang because I'm OG. He's from Chicago. He said, I'm OG. You gonna have to see me if you go there, and I'm gonna come get you. And I'm bringing some heat with me. And so don't worry about it because you coming home, and then I'm gonna touch your butt up when you get home. So I had a real strict upbringing. Went to church every Sunday. We cleaned the church up. We did at that time. You had to stencil everything. You put that ink in there and you rolled out everything. I was in the choir. We did everything. We were either an usher, we were in the choir. We were always active. He kept us active, so we wouldn't get distracted with all the stuff that's going on because the gangs have always been here in LA. They've always been here in LA. The other caveat was I was an athlete, and then you got to pass because they saw that you were a way out. And so when I would go to a party or something, I would meet some of the guys who either were in prison and so forth. And some of them I had gone to church with. Some of them we were friends. We grew up together. We were like 5, 6 years old, but they took a different turn because they didn't have that family backing, which is what my father always preached. If I had guys on my track team, they got kicked out of the house. They came over my house and we all had a bed. The one rule though, my mother, hats came off, no elbows on the table, no swearing in the house. And
So you were ready for UCLA, huh?
well, yeah, socially I was ready from a standpoint. I was ready because I had good manners, and I was raised to open the door for a female chivalry. You didn't disrespect the female. If my father caught me arguing with my sister, no matter what it was, I got a beating because he said, no, you don't do that. And so we were raised with a strict thing. When I went to UCLA, I was watching white folks do some stupid ass stuff. They were taking exams and so forth, and they didn't get an A, and they jump off the building. And I'm like, hold up, that didn't make no sense to me.
Exactly.
And mind you, Angela Davis was at UCLA. So I had a chance to meet all the Black Panthers that came down. Elaine Brown, John Huggins, Prentice Carter, and all that. As a matter of fact, I was in the meeting in Campbell Hall when they got shot and killed. And Lamar
Are you
Lyons and
serious?
I happened to leave to go to practice. Lamar was a baseball player and I ran track. So we had to leave because some of we were in the meeting and the Panthers were there, and the Us Marlon Karinga's group was there. So there was a kind of territorial thing that was going on in there. And I left and all the shooting came. And when I got back to my dorm room, which I lived off campus, Joe Brown, which is Judge Joe, Joe Brown was in my room with his rifle and he had his hat on. Oh, I'm gonna kill him and stuff. I said, Joe, put that stuff down. And, you know, and so we congregated in the room and stayed in there all weekend and hung out and fellowshiped. And it was an eye opener for me because in the community we were all the same. But when I went up to UCLA, there was Asian, Jews, Blacks, but there were Blacks from the hood, but there were also Blacks from LA High School, which were the doctors and the lawyers and the upper educated. Because my mom and dad my dad was a truck driver, and my mom was, you know, she made food, sure food was on our house. But the one thing I noticed with her, that 5 o'clock in the morning when I got up to go to school, she was reading the Bible and say, God bless you, my son. And my father, I always saw him working. I never saw him doing anything but working. So when I was like 7, to spend time with my dad, I went to work with him. He had a janitorial business. So I learned another skill on how to take care, and it was in white folks' offices. So at 7, I was interfacing with white folks back in that time when it wasn't fashionable. So I never really was intimidated, but I was always upset because how come I don't know this? I took the SAT and I looked at this, I said, how come I don't know that? And I'm in the top part of my classes. How come I don't know this? How come I don't know? And I asked teachers, and it was mostly white, but I asked them, I said, can you teach me this? It was a Spanish class. I said, can you teach me this guy? You should have learned that. And before I said, well, I didn't learn it. Can you teach me? I don't have time. I said, okay. So there was a Hispanic and Spanish, and I'll do your math work. And I found somebody else in English. I said, you teach me the English and I'll teach you the math work. That's how I got through and got over and learned that you had to use your wits. You had to use all the street hustling with the homies, with the pimps and the hustlers in the neighborhood. I took that over to UCLA and learned to educate myself and learn to with the presentation that I had from mom and dad and from my I would say from my Southern upbringing in LA, because mom was from Oklahoma and dad was from Chicago. I had a mixture of different things, but the main thing was family. Family was eminent and important, and it's something that I cherish even to this day. And I'm going through all of this before I even get into my athletic process, all the other stuff, my resume, because that foundation of the family I used to watch my mom and dad argue, but I also watched them make up. I used to watch my uncles and them on, you know how, on 4th of July, everybody wants to barbecue. I watched them get sauced up a little too much and fight, but the next day they all loving each other. And I watched them talk plenty of trash at each other, but the one thing they did, they loved each other. So I got a chance to see different things, tolerations, acceptance, and putting together my Christian upbringing that allowed me actually to survive, because I've been taken down, up against the wall, MF, shake down. I had a fro when I was at UCLA, so I was profiled all the time. I mean, it was one time I had a little bent on my, back then, your license was made out of paper. And, you shove it in your pocket, and so forth. They want to take me to jail because I damaged federal goods and so forth. And it was always, you knew that if you were of no, don't look like them, you weren't gonna get invited to the table. My thing was to figure out how I was going to make sure that I had a voice at the table. I'll stop
Good,
there
John.
because we can go further.
And then I'll go back questions to you. Ralph, can you hear me now? Ralph? I still don't know if he can hear.
I think they switched up.
Yes, I can hear you now, Bev.
Oh, okay,
Hey,
good.
what's up, Ralph?
Hey,
Okay.
sounds like John to me.
Hey,
Yep,
man.
that's John.
Can I
So,
say one
Ralph.
thing? Can I say one thing about Ralph?
Yeah, go ahead.
When I started running, Ralph started interviewing me, and he pulled me up to that truck and made me go in. He said, "You're gonna wash yourself." I said, "No, I ain't doing that," because I never liked how I looked. I never, because I grew up, you had to cast your eyes down. You go into the hood, you had to be careful. And Ralph said, "I'm gonna put you in this truck, and you're gonna watch, and you're gonna learn to speak. You're gonna stop using all these colloquialisms and all that other stuff, and you're gonna speak crooms and papa. It don't matter what you do when you get around your homies, but if you're trying to present yourself in the media form, here's what you're gonna do." And I like to say, thank you, my brother, because you're the one started me talking, because I wouldn't say anything before. And now you have problems shutting me up.
But John, let me say a little bit to your thank you, to your thank you. Where I grew up, a thank you like that would say, "Hey, send money, John. I take, the sound of silver hurts my ears, so send money, man."
So, Ralph, I'm glad
you're
you're
welcome.
here.
You know you're welcome, John.
Yeah, man. Love you.
Now, what John just said about Ralph is really who Ralph is. I mean, you can go through all his accolades and they are phenomenal. But who he is as a person is even more of a phenomenon. Ralph, as I said, was in 60, 64, and 68. And even in his last Olympiad, there was a young man who got kicked off his team for protesting, for standing up for what he believed, by the name of Bob Beamon. And the camaraderie they had in the highest level of competition, in the highest level of social unrest and protest, is a testament to who Ralph is. But Ralph, I want to start with, how did it feel when you won? I'm sure Jesse Owens was your hero. And there's a lot of Ohio State students on here right now that I'm sure they know his legacy, but to break his Olympic record and then to turn around knowing what he went through, and then you're here in 60, 64, and 68, which I know wasn't much better.
No, Bev, I can't say that it was better. You'd like to say that there was some betterment over those years, but I mean, it was very, very interesting. Let me go back to Jesse. The first time I met Jesse, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I mean, here's a guy who has done all of these fantastic things and brought the Nazis to their knees. And there were so many people on that team. I think there were 12, 14 of the brothers on that team that finished first, second. We took 2 places in the high jump by two brothers, Jesse and Ralph Metcalf. And let me toot my horn a bit. The guy who finished second to Jesse in the 100 meters was named Ralph Metcalf. And, when I was searching, trying to find out what I was going to do with track and field or how I was going to make myself known, I used to tell a lie that I was named for him because his name was Ralph Harold Metcalf. and my name is Ralph Harold Boston. So, you know, and I got to know him. And over all the years, I've known how people always seem to want to help each other. The guy who really pointed the way for me, I think, was Dr. Gregory Bell, who was a 56 champion in the long jump. And I can't imagine where I would be without people like Greg, Dr. Herb Douglas, who was a 48, I believe it was 48 long jump
40.
bronze medalist, who
48.
now reaches out to touch people. He's 96 years old, I believe Herb is. And he is one of the better people in the world that I know. So, I mean, I've enjoyed what I've done physically, athletically, but I've enjoyed more just meeting people, just seeing people, just learning people, just having people to say, hey, man, I've heard of you. Wow, wow. Growing up in Laurel, Mississippi, and understand Laurel, Mississippi, it's about maybe 18,000 now. Imagine what it was in the 50s. Laurel, Mississippi. There are some people who are from Laurel that have done some things. Opera singer Leontine Price. We went to the same high school, so Leontine was from Laurel. There is a very famous neurosurgeon who lived in LA for a while, and I think she's now back in Laurel. She bought a house and moved back. Dr. Deborah Hyde, who was one of 5 female neurosurgeons. So Laurel has done some things. Interestingly enough, the first person to repeat as high hurdle champion in the Olympic Games was Lee Quincy Calhoun. Lee Calhoun was born in Laurel, and he moved to Gary, Indiana when he was very young. So Laurel has done some things, but it's also done some other things. There was a name, people who followed may know the name, but there was a guy named Sam Bowers, Bowers, who was president, whatever you call him, of the Mississippi Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. That guy was from Laurel, Mississippi, and you had to be very careful, because anything could happen, and there was nobody that would help you or work for you except when they found a way to get rid of you. If any of you are into reading, and I hope you are, there is a book called The Eyes of Willie McGee. The Eyes of Willie McGee. There was a very famous trial where Willie McGee was executed because he was supposed to have attacked a white woman. If you want some reading about Laurel, Mississippi, read The Eyes of Willie McGee. Wow. I mean, it was tough. Bev, I've moved on and around, and I may have not answered your question. So please, would you
let me ask
the question?
again? Yeah.
Ask.
So considering where you came from out of Mississippi, and then you went on to be one of the few outstanding males at Tennessee State, which was known as the Tiger Bells. You were one of the male athletes that the men didn't get as much publicity, but you did a phenomenal job as an athlete. So going into 68 Olympics with all the social unrest, with John and Tommy and everyone else there, what was it like?
There were a number of people at Tennessee State. Certainly one was Waumea Tyus, and that's a name that lots of people would know. And we would talk to each other at workouts or after workouts in the calf as we were having a meal. And we talk about what's happening and why is it happening or how is it happening. And it appeared to us that there was, how can I phrase this? There was an idea that the river that flows from Minnesota down to New Orleans, the Mississippi River, it seemed to us that everything seemed to be coming from west of the Mississippi River. In fact, California. And no one ever said to us, look, here's what's going to happen, or here's what we're thinking about. Can we have your input? Or would you please give some input? What do you think about it? We didn't see or hear any of that. We just tried to operate and operate as best we could. Tyus obviously did well because she won 2 goals at Mexico City in the straightaway race, and she anchored the relay. So, I mean, she did well. It was tough, Bev, and in being a Southerner in the South and having to look over your shoulder because, you know, things were still pretty ugly then. So it was tough. It was really tough.
When you got to the Olympics and Bob, I think that he had trouble. Can you tell us a little bit about Bob Beamon and his struggle? And if you can, about what was the buzz around John Carlos and Tommy Smith after the protest? What was it like for all of you guys after that happened? Because I'm sure the U.S. clamped down hard on everybody.
The guy who clamped down was not just the U.S. It was Avery Brundage, who was part of the IOC. I mean, they
and I'm
clamped
sure
down.
John Smith has heard that name before.
Nah,
Yeah.
John has never heard Avery Brundage before. But Brundage clamped down, and it got pretty ugly. And Jet is what we were calling Tommy at that time, Tommy Jet. Jet finally ended up, you know, getting his awards and medals and so forth. And Jet left, flew back to California. John had some trouble. He was married to Kim then. John had some trouble going through, going to an interview or trying to leave the stadium. And some guys were trying to block him so they could talk to him. And he said, if any of you put your hands on me, I'm going to knock you down and jump on you. I remember him saying that. And John ended up coming back to the U.S. and he was married to Kim at that time. And as I remember, he told me that one day he went to bed, he woke up the next morning and someone had killed his dog and threw it on the front porch. So there's this bleeding creature with all of the with the blood. His wife was so distraught about everything, she committed suicide. I mean, that was really, really, really rough. I didn't endure that. I really did not endure that. But I did see it, and I hurt with it, and I hurt for him. But I could not hurt instead of him. I mean, that was his thing. And he suffered through that.
And Mother Dezi, I'd like to ask you a question, because people who don't understand, and I've lived in both places. I grew up some in Florida, some in California, some in Mississippi. So I've been in both areas. And John, you can probably attest to this too, and Ralph. So I'll let all 3 of you answer. But in the South, you had to say yes, sir, no, sir. And if you didn't, your parents could pay a price for it.
Mm-mm.
And then when I go to school in California in 72, the kids in California, I got in fights for being too polite. Because they didn't say yes, sir, and no, sir in California. So I had to always know where I became very conscientious of where I was at all times during this time. So Mother Dezi, you as a political activist saw the results of a Black Panther, but you also went down south and saw what it was like for Dr. King. What's your eval, as Ralph spoke about, being a man from the South, and they're not even being aware that we can fight against racism openly, and being in California where they were very militant about the stance against fighting?
You know, that's a absolutely very profound question. And as I've said to many people over the years, racism is just insidious. And if what we're learning now is we see, for an example, that out of all the people, and even though, for example, in this recent election, we saw a change in the White House to someone like a Biden and a Harris. But the reality of that is 74 million people still voted for 45. Racism is alive and well and was then, Ben, even in California. It's a difference, again, in terms of how it manifested itself. We in California that grew up in that era, and I was, again, I left Louisiana when I was 6 months old from Ruston, and my folks moved to California. So I basically grew up in California. And like I said, at 79 years old, it's interesting because we thought we had it more progressive. We could say things, we could demonstrate, we could do things. But in many ways, it was like a facade. What I saw when I went to Atlanta and worked at SNCC and worked in Alabama and worked in the southern states for voter registration, it was more overt. Racism in California was more covert. Racism is racism. And systemic racism is even, to me, the worst. And that's what we have to remember. Systemic racism, it permeates our policies. It permeates the things that we're asked to do. So we may not have had to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am to the teachers in California. But at the same time, if you were Black and you were sitting in the front of the room or the back, you still faced a lot of racist charges. It was just like, again, our Vice President mentioned Kamala Harris, and I'm sorry about that phone. I thought I had cut all that off. When I saw Kamala, and she talked about the notion when she had to be bused to school in Berkeley, California. All of you on this call know that Berkeley, California was perceived to be one of the most progressive places in our nation. And yet at the same time, when they started reporting just what happened on January the 6th, there were people in that protest from Berkeley and Oakland. So I think the thing that we have to always remember that there is the covert and there's the overt, but it doesn't matter because all of it's bad. And so until we start dealing with addressing the systemic thing that causes racism in society, we're going to be experiencing that no matter what we said out loud. And so, no, yes, I didn't have to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, when I was growing up in California, but I certainly experienced through being eliminated from certain activities because you were Black. I couldn't be in a certain production, or I couldn't be in a certain class. When I was being tested in high school, and teach you know how you do those equivalent deals. What are you're going to be good for? What should you be looking for in terms of college prep? My parents, just like John Smith said, always said, "You're going to college. It doesn't make any difference." But when we were tested in my college, prep counselor told me that, well, you might as well not even talk about going to college because your aptitude said that you're mechanically inclined. Well, I ain't never been mechanically inclined. I can't even fix the TV. My son has to come and change the time on my TV. And you know that, Bev.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was told, and to discourage you. And yet I end up with a PhD. So, it's like racism is alive and well throughout this country, clearly as it was demonstrated on January the 6th. So we have to be mindful that no matter what is said overtly, and I think sometimes overt racism is even a little bit better to deal with because it speaks out loud, it says it, and you don't see the hidden meanings that are going on in terms of the covert racism that exists in our society.
Wow.
So, John, I have a question for you. You came into a very racist environment at the end of 72 as an athlete, 68 to 72. But here you are in 2021, and you're seeing the same mindsets. What do you tell your athletes and what do you tell yourself? Because you've been through the whole genre of it as an athlete and as a coach.
You can't preach hate. You have to have an idea of what you want. but you have to be educated. The distractions that these young people have now is they got this. See, I remember getting up 5 o'clock in the morning and we had to run for our classes. I had to go in the library, get my library card and go in the stacks and pull my books down, and I couldn't leave the library. So I had to stay in there and study while I was in there because you couldn't take them out. You'd be fine, you wouldn't graduate. Nothing was convenient for us. I remember walking across campus and see the federal building was down the street from UCLA. So J. Edgar Hoover and all the FBI and CIA, they had offices there. So they had a profile on all of us. So no matter where we went, they knew what we were doing. And my safe haven was always the track, because nobody came out there, nobody wanted to run and so forth. So that was a safe haven, but it also was a place where I could think, and I could think clearly. So when I did go into the student body, I was clear-minded, and I wasn't swayed by people's perceptions of what they thought, because a lot of people don't read. They are at UCLA, they have this corner, or actually this podium, where everybody got up and they were talking, and everybody, you know, you rile people up and so forth, and they made themselves obvious, because then you were profiled. So my thing was find something that I could do, which was run. Not only run, but be the best at it. Be the best ever there was. So I had a single-mindedness about what I was doing, my gift. It's the thing that's gotten me here at age 70, so that I'm able to reach back and share some of the experiences with the young people that I work with. I'm not trying to be with them. My genre ain't rapping. My genre is jazz. I can take you all the way back to the bebop era. I knew all of them down there. Here, I enjoy their genre because it's like my daughter, because it's all of our information is passed down through songs and folklore. And so I try to find what they have and listen to some of the lyrics that they do and try to ask them questions about what did that mean? And they tell me, I say, oh, you know, now I'm in a conversation with them and I'm delineating information and I'm making them, they're like, Coach, you don't act like you in your 70s. I said, well, what is a 70-year supposed to act like?
Oh, great question.
Yeah, you know, I said, I grew up on Nina Simone, Young, Gifted, and Black.
Hey, hey.
And we preached that all through. That was one of our things that got us through. You know, we're on campus and the cops will come through and they'll shoot us up and let the white counterparts go off scot-free. And you had to learn how to survive that. So it was, I try to explain to them that what is going on now. I said, the thing is now is that these billionaire white kids, billionaire families have these white kids that are in protest that are walking with you to make Black lives matter, get in the forefront. But Black lives always mattered all the way through. It's always been that way. We've always talked about being Black and proud. Everybody was like, oh, you Black and proud? You damn right I am. Because see, I was telling Bill Walton one day, I was walking through and he's over there.
Amen to that, John. I just want to amen that.
Okay, baby. Yeah. Bill Walton looked at me, he said, come on, Smitty, protest. Because he knew I was a hothead, but I was shrewd what I would do. And I looked at him and I said, Big Red, you know the difference between me and you? They're gonna take you to jail. They ain't gonna hit you because your hair is red and you can cut your hair. I cut my hair, ain't shit there. It's still the same damn thing. And I said, no, thank you. I took my butt and went right on from, I was taking the final exam, went right over to my apartment and acted like I had some good sense, because you have to know what fight to put on, and you have to have your people around you, where when you do go to battle, you're armed and dangerous, but you can't go to a gunfight with a butter knife. That don't work. So how we armed ourselves back when we were students is that we learned it was important to educate yourself. And here's the thing that I always laugh. Oh, you speak so well.
Yeah.
What the hell else am I supposed to be doing?
Yes.
No, you're not like all the other ones. So how you know what I'm like? You ain't seen my household. I said, you know what I grew up in? I grew up in a Wart Parker floor, three bedrooms. My brother and I shared one. My sister shared another, and it was one bathroom. And the women had priority. So me and my brother, we went out and watered the grass a lot in the backyard. So we grew up, but the one thing about it, there was always food on the stove, and there was a lot of love in the house. And that's what got us, the love that you have for yourself and that you reach back for everybody else. And see, and that's one thing that I liked about when I was watching and listening to all of the over in Moore Hall, that was a big lecture hall. A lot of time, like Stokely, Rap Brown, Angela, they all would come and they would have a gatherings. I would sit in the front because I want to see what these people who had all this. I used to love to hear them talk. Man, they had the nice gab and stuff. I said, I want to see what y'all about. And I got down there and got some of that flavor and got myself to the point, okay, I know what I'm doing. And I'm gonna give you one little caveat to tell you how Black people really work. In 1972, and Ralph, you remember this, when the apartheid, when the South Africans, when they wanted to, they were trying to get into the games, and there was a protest about them not getting in, and that's the last thing that Brundage wanted. So we are all of the brothers and the sisters. We went over to the South African and the Black ones and said, if we protest, would that be something that we wouldn't be violating anything? They said, you see that over there? I said, yeah. I said, that's where all the white ones go. You see that one that's dirty and don't have no windows and all? He said, well, that's our bus. I'm like, oh, hell no.
No.
So we got together as a collective. And this is the first time that I being at UCLA and being in a lot of meetings, and you get into a bunch of fights because you have different ways you approach things. So I was kind of used to that. So myself, Chuck Smith, Wayne Collette, may he rest in peace. We all got in a room, brought Neil Amder in there from the New York Times, and we said, Neil, we want you to pin this. And if you say something, if you say anything to anybody, guess what? You're gonna get a visit. He said, I got you. So we said, hey, you can let the South Africans in. And then they said, oh no, well, we're gonna use the British passport. We said, no, y'all can't come. And so they rescinded. And to me, that was one of the victories that I saw, that we have power. We stick together. We have power, because together we stand, divided we fall. And we're going to continue, and we're getting better. We're getting better. It's getting better. It's not where it should be. And I hate this other one. Oh, well, it's better than it was before. Hell, you know what? You stepped on one side of my neck. So because you can step on this side, so it's better on that side or this side. So it's
well.
I'm getting a little militant right now, but because you're making me walk down memory lane.
Nailed it. Yep, you nailed it. I want to acknowledge someone on this call. I know I've been trying to reach them. So I cannot have them on this call without at least acknowledging them. Gwendolyn Berry did a protest about the social injustice that exists within our society, and I'm sure, I'm certain she paid a price for it. And I don't know if she has a GoFundMe page or anything, but if she does, I hope she lets us know so that we can donate for her to continue to pursue her dreams as an Olympiad. Because I'm sure, just as John, Carlos, Tommy Smith, and so many others have made a stand, and they find a way to punish you, as Mother Dezi said, covertly. So you can't protest against it. So Gwendolyn, if you'd like to speak, feel free to. If not, if you have a GoFundMe page for people to donate to support you, please put it in the chat, and we will make sure that we support you on your journey, because we support you in your stance. I think that's important to say. So with that, if anybody has any questions for our panelists, we're about to wrap this up. Please feel free to ask. I know Karen is here from Ohio State with Jesse Owens there. I know she's
Karen Dennis.
Yep, she's on
there
here.
she is.
Karen, unmute.
Come on, girl.
Hey, John.
Hey, baby.
Hey, Ralph.
Hey,
Nice to meet
Karen.
you, Mother Desi. Listen, Ralph was always, the person that could come. He solved problems for the women at Tennessee State. He was always there as a big brother, as a good friend, and all of that. John's always been there for coaches. He shares his knowledge, he shares his love, he shares his friendship. And I've always appreciated that from both of you. And Gwen did make a protest. I believe it was at the World Championships just recently. And, I believe that, she got sort of exonerated some by getting a really major award by USA Track and Field. But my question is to John, when you and the other athletes were in the midst of all the protests, what did your coaches do? How did they respond to you guys?
My white coach. Imagine.
I need to know.
Guess what? I wasn't invited to dinner no more.
Really?
I was a kind of a guy. I had a daddy and a mommy, so I didn't need no white man trying to be my father, or trying to teach me how to be a man. I had good instructions, because one thing, when you go to church, there's a certain decorum, there's a certain hierarchy, there's certain things that you do and you don't. And so I was very comfortable being around, even though I didn't look like them. My coach and I, we and Jim Bush, may he rest in peace. I have to say one thing, and it was to his benefit, but he did come to my house in the hood to break bread with my family. And the one thing that I'm loyal. And I knew Jim was he looked like a Marine, a redneck. He's from Bakersfield. And, but my father always would tell me there's good in everybody. So in spite of how they look, so I wouldn't be angry because that came on me, I had to look for the good in him. So therefore, when I look for the good, it freed me up to do what I wanted to do. And as long as I didn't violate stuff.
You had no hatred in your heart for anybody.
Well,
It kept you clear.
Well, no. What it did, I had to acknowledge it and then control it, because
Very good.
Say, oh no, I don't hate nobody. No, I'm still working on that.
You're still a work in progress, huh, John?
Oh yeah, that thing called forgiveness. Oh, I'm still wrestling with that one. But what I did, I didn't let things get in my way. because I had a goal that I wanted to do. And when I was with Ralph, opened up a door that made me get in front of the camera and speak, which is one of the reasons why I was able to go into the movie industry, because I had a challenge, and I learned to express myself in a sense of eloquence, and to be able to speak on issues and know if I made a mistake, okay, I say I'm sorry. Now it might be something I have to like live with, but whatever came out of my mouth, I was responsible for it.
Mm.
Because someone would say, "Hey, I heard you talking about me." I said, "Yeah, I was." Now you want to know what the contents are, or you want to go on with your perception? Because either way, I was talking about you. It might have been a little love I was talking about, but I still was talking about you. So it gave me a sense of being comfortable with me. But it all stems back, all of this stuff that goes on with when you are involved in a group setting, you have to keep yourself. You have to remember who you are and what you do, because they're separate. And if people talk about you, they're only talking about what you do. They don't know who you are. So you can keep those two things separate. And then what happens is that now you can listen to them, like the biggest thing that's come out of this with this racism and stuff. And I'm like Stephen A. Smith, let them talk. Now you know who they are. Those same people that were patting you on the back, those same people were doing that. Now they're slamming in the door and calling you the N-word in front, not behind with their white friends. They feel they could do that outright. And that's the one thing that in my household, my dad, he never let us talk racist at our table. He never let us do that. He would not, that was the worst thing you can do in the household, because he knew from him growing up, he grew up in the 20s. He and my mom's in the South, dad from Chicago. So he grew up during Prohibition, and mom grew up there in the South, where you better say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. So I had two sides of two halves of the same whole, and I was raised to, if you don't want to be called anything, then don't do that to them. They can do whatever they want to do, but that's them doing it, not you doing it to them. So that's
Very good point.
That's how I handled all the other stuff, but not with the factor, because of many days I was, because I hunted when I was a kid. My uncles and all of them from the South, they hunted. So I always kept a little arsenal at the house, a little knife so you can skin when you go out there. But the one thing you learn, and when you are around firearms, you learn humility. You learn how to keep yourself from getting stupid, and you never tell people what you got at the house.
Gotcha.
John, I have a quick question, if I could.
Yes, sir.
You hunted? What did you hunt?
Well, what was it? Ever in season? Deer.
Oh, you hunted more than just small game.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was yeah, and you can go up to Fresno, all up and down the wine country. And I have another story. I remember going deer hunting, and I was the only brother in this, and about 10 of us. And I was one guy, he didn't have any teeth in his mouth, and he had some chewing, spitting, and he on his belly, and he had a big old splot of chew on there. And I looked at it and said, isn't he? Look at this, I'm gonna watch him. Well, we were down in a ravine, and he was down and I was up, and there was a deer that rode up there. He shot it and I shot it, knocked it down. And he got his knife, wiped it off and stuff, and he said, now I'm gonna show you something. This redneck took his knife and was a surgeon. I felt so ashamed of myself because I judged him. He cleaned that carcass out. He gave me a lesson that I still remember today. He didn't look anything like what he did, but he carved that out and he said, "Here, hold my gun." He put that deer on it and walked it out and gave it to me. And I'm like, okay, lesson well
That's a
learned.
good man.
Yeah,
John, can I
Definitely.
tell you a quick story?
yeah.
When I grew up in Laurel, Mississippi, there were absolutely no squirrels around our neighborhood. None. And I didn't, I never thought about it, even though squirrel to us was small game. I never thought about it. When I moved to where I am now, just south of Atlanta, where there's a big lake and trees everywhere, and you see those little furry tail creatures running around, I asked my brother, I said, "Brother Charles, why were there no squirrels in and around our neighborhood in Laurel, Mississippi?"
I know the answer to that one.
You do, huh? We ate them.
You ate him.
We ate them.
Squirrels were smart. I grew up.
Oh, man. Oh,
I grew up in the
we
country.
ate them. Oh, gosh.
I grew up in the country in a 3-room house, kitchen, bedroom, and a living room, and the kids slept on the floor in the living room.
And it was called a pallet, right?
Yep.
I wouldn't call it a pallet. It was called the living room.
We slept on a pallet. Oh, God.
We were lucky enough to have a mattress that we slid under my parents' bed, and they pulled it out at night, so we slept on a mattress.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we had our squirrels were so smart during the day, they would move from tree to tree. And then at night they would come down and get the pecans off the ground.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to hunt a squirrel, you had to stay up late at night. Now the squirrels got smart enough as I grew older to where they knew to wait until there was no movement on the ground before they went down on the ground to get those pecans that fell down during the day.
Y'all
Wow.
are crazy.
Beverly,
Gwendolyn, I see that you're
Beverly,
on. Can you
Beverly,
say something?
before
Yeah.
I jump off, this Mother Desi, I want to tell Raymond and John, I have a yard full of squirrels and they can come up and bring their guns and whatever they want, because I want to get clean up my water system, my irrigation, and all of that. But listen,
Thank you, Mother Desi.
Beverly, I'm sorry, as you know, I've got another call to get in. If there's one or two other questions, fine, but I've enjoyed listening and participating so much. And I've put my name and our WAPA contact information in the chat in case somebody wants to follow up. But what a blessing and a pleasure it's been. So I love you all and thank you so much. And I'm going to be jumping off in just a couple of seconds.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm
Nice
gonna
meeting
have
you.
Gwendolyn, can you close us out with your words and with your message and with your purpose? We would love to hear from you.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Ms. Beverly. I didn't expect to speak. I was actually invited to this call by Miss Rosalind Joseph. She's actually the head coach at SIU Carbondale, which was my old college. So I'm happy that she sent me the link. I'm grateful to be on the call, to have heard all the stories, all the things that, my generation never heard or don't know anything about. And just the fact that everybody on this call has had to deal with, social issues, being an athlete, because of, this country. My mission, my purpose has always been to bring awareness, to fight, to be heard, to be understood, and to be respected as a Black athlete in this country, even though this country has no respect for Black people. It never has, and they still don't. So I feel like, my fight was just that. I feel like, I've lost a lot. Like you said, I did lose everything almost immediately. I was called by most of my sponsors, threatened by them to never speak or to never do things like that again. And, it was very intimidating. I was very overwhelmed. But I decided to stay in the sport because I saw how impactful my voice actually was. And I saw that I could make a change. And with the help of my coach, my mentors, and my family, I was ultimately, because of you guys being the pioneers and up at the forefront, I was actually able to ignite change with the USOPC that we've needed for a very long time, so that we would no longer be divided and conquered, when we stand up for our communities, our children, and our plight to be respected, just to be respected. I was happy to, carry on the legacy of Dr. John Smith, Dr. John Carlos, Tommy Smith, Miss Wyoming Tyus, all those before me. I feel like we still have a lot of work to do. And I feel like I'll continue to fight for what's right because that's what I believe. As far as the
Gwendolyn,
GoFundMe,
how do we support you in a GoFundMe? Do you have a GoFundMe?
I don't have a GoFundMe only because I feel like it would have been, selfish for me to, ask for money or funding during COVID.
No, please do.
Yeah, everybody keeps telling me
We
to
will
start
support
one.
you.
Okay.
No, we will. So we need to support you.
Yes, ma'am.
We need to let you know you're not alone. Everybody on this call
Amen.
should post it on their social media so that you can continue to do what you do. And they know that if you're not alone, they won't bother you anymore.
Absolutely.
And that's important. So you do this for your cause as well as your goals should not be sacrificed for your stance.
Yes, ma'am.
So please start one.
Okay.
There's Karen Dennis on here, Ohio State.
Well,
You can
nice
get in touch with Rosalind. You can get in
That's
touch
a
with
nice
Rosalind.
Coach Kearney?
And you can get in touch with everybody, all those coaches that you know, and they will get the word. Rosalind's on here. They will get the word out to us to get the word out. And I'm challenging every athlete and person on this call to not just contribute. I don't care if it's $5. Just give something to let them know the number of people who support her, but put it on your social medias. Let's use our social medias as a voice for positive change.
Coach Kearney, I would like to say SIU Carbondale is my alumni where I received my PhD in psychology and sports psychology. I would love to pass on my information to Gwendolyn Berry to see what support I could provide for her emotionally, psychologically, because we can't be out there alone in regards to our mental health and our mental well-being. And I'd like to provide that support in addition to financial support.
Thank you. Thank you so
And
much.
we will go through, should we go through you, Rosalind?
I was just gonna ask, I can, yes, you let me know and I'll connect you all.
So
Well, thank you, folks.
Gwendolyn, we will connect.
It has
Okay.
been well. It has been great. John, always good, man. Thanks.
Always. You too, Karen.
I love
and-
everybody. Thank you guys so very much. Ralph, thank you for rearranging your schedule to be here.
And Raymond, you shouldn't be eating those squirrels, man.
Man, I hadn't had a squirrel in over 50-some years.
What about
But
possum?
We still killing
remember-
squirrels on the show.
Guys,
You remember, right?
yeah, I remember back in the 50s.
Yeah.
That's all that we had.
All right, y'all. Thanks.
All right, you guys have a blessed evening, and thank you guys. Next week we have Dr. John 2 weeks from now we have Dr. John Carlos, we have Jackie Joyner Kersey, and we have Gwen Torrance. Don't miss it. Blessings to everyone and good night.
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 Good night.
Thank you. Good night.